Hey there, Deluxe fans. We hope you're feeling particularly magical today. In today's video, we are going to be discussing exactly why Abuela Alma seemed to hold Isabela more than her other grandchildren, particularly Luisa and Mirabel. We know that Mirabel got pushed aside by Abuela when she didn't receive a gift on her 5th birthday. But interestingly enough, we also see Luisa get taken advantage of by Alma, despite getting a gift herself. In fact, Isabela seems to be the only granddaughter that Abuela clearly favors over the rest of her grandchildren. We see throughout the movie just how important Isabela and her success are to Abuela Alma, and sadly, it seems like Luisa gets used and stepped on in the process, almost like Abuela sees her more like a machine rather than human. But why? Why did Isabela get picked to be the favorite? Well, the reason why may actually come from a grim psychological standpoint, especially when it comes to the way Alma views and treats different members of her familia. Now, when it comes to family, people have favorites. That's just how it is. No one wants to admit it, but you can't help but like or find a reason to be more attached to one family member over another, or even be more critical of one versus another. Abuela Alma is brutally guilty of this trait, and what's crazy is that she doesn't even try to hide it too well. While we are made to believe that she loved everyone in her family, which I'm sure she does, she certainly loves some more than others. And the Queen of Queens is none other than Señorita Perfecta Isabela. Throughout Encanto, there is a constant theme that Isabela is held above everyone else in the family for being the perfect madrigal. And while at first it might have just seemed like Mirabel's description of an older sibling that she didn't quite see eye to eye with, it's quickly made apparent that Abuela Alma sees it to be true as well. The perfect depiction of Alma's bit of extra love and affection toward her granddaughter can be seen when they show us the collection of pictures hanging on the wall that shows each madrigal next to their respective doors. If you notice, Abuela Alma is in all of the pictures with the children, and in all of the pictures, she's holding the candle with both of her hands. All of them except for one. And whose picture would that be? None other than Isabela Madrigal. You can clearly see in her picture, Alma is standing with one hand touching Isabela. Not only that, but it's the only photo where Abuela Alma has a smile on her face. I don't know about you, but I'd be calling out favoritism if I was in that family. We can clearly see that in Abuela's eyes, Isabela was the perfect definition of what a madrigal could be, and what everyone in the family should strive to be like. Perfection was something that was pressed onto Isabela since she was a little girl, and it seems like the person who pressured her to feel this way the most was without a doubt Alma. I mean, she couldn't even let a single flower be out of place. Check out the scene in Encanto when Dolores informs the family that Mariano wants to have a family with 5 children. Isabela sprouts multiple flowers on top of her head, most of them being pink. In fact, all of them were pink except for one single white flower. One tiny imperfection, and who should spot it? Abuela Alma. And instead of just letting it be, she specifically plucked it and tossed it to the side in order to maintain perfection on her sweet granddaughter, and then made sure to straighten Isabela's posture. How loving. And as we said, Alma didn't hide her opinion on the matter too well either, and this caused a lot of stress for Isabela. She was so set on making her grandmother happy and appearing to be perfect that not only would she put on a fake smile, she would spend days practicing her perfect poses in her bedroom so that she would always look like the grace-filled angel that her family in town saw her as. This is most likely why she feels so much better after she and Mirabel had a genuine heart-to-heart. The show of expression by Isabela didn't go over well with some people though. I mean, we saw how upset Alma got after Mirabel opened her sister's eyes to a world where she didn't have to be perfect. All she did was help Isabela realize one of the most important lessons that anyone could learn in their life, which is to be themselves. And Alma practically disowned Mirabel for it. Isabela seemed happier than we had ever seen her in the movie. But because it went against the idea of perfection, Alma saw it as her going wild or losing control, and blamed everything on Mirabel, her only family member who wasn't given an apparent gift. Now, it should be noted that Abuela Alma clearly treats her family members differently depending on what their gift is and how it can affect the family. The only time that we saw Julieta was when she was working with food in some way, shape, or form. Every time Alma talked with Dolores, she was asking her for information based on what Dolores could hear. Even Camilo was only ever used for his ability to shapeshift. And then of course there was Mirabel, who was seen as a problem child specifically because she wasn't granted a gift, and was a sign of their magic fading. But there was someone who got it the worst. One family member who was basically used as a machine for every simple task. Luisa was the middle child out of Julieta's 3 daughters, and much like most middle children, she didn't receive as much attention as the eldest and youngest siblings. Think about it for a moment. While Isabela was held on the highest of pedestals, and Mirabel was seen as a disaster, Luisa was practically non-existent. I mean, unless we're talking about her ability to take on any chore in the village, that is. But regardless, Luisa is only spoken to when she was needed, and she was needed for literally every small task simply because she was the strong one. The sad thing about Luisa's story is that this treatment didn't just stop with her abuela. It's very very clear that Alma sets the tone for the town and how the people in town are supposed to act and treat one another. And when they see her ordering Luisa around left and right without a please or thank you, they further feel entitled to treat her in the same way. In that single scene before her song Surface Pressure, you can see a great example of this. Look at how many tasks the townsfolk are asking of her, and they all make these requests in under a minute as if she doesn't or shouldn't have her own life to live. Luisa's mistreatment is also apparent during the party scene as the movie leads up to Antonio receiving his gift. While everyone else in the family got to enjoy themselves, greet guests, and spend time with the party, Luisa was still being ordered around to do physical tasks. She even dropped a load of barrels at her grandmother, yelling about needing the piano upstairs instead of downstairs. It's especially sad because to us, we saw Luisa as a gentle, kind soul who would literally break her back if it meant helping others. But it seems like most people just saw her as a tool to be used for their own personal gain. And when you compare how Luisa got treated to how Isabela got treated, it's like night and day in terms of who was Alma's favorite. But getting back to the main question of this video, why did Isabela become Abuela Alma's favorite family member and not one of her own daughters or a different grandchild? I mean, it's clear that she wasn't going to find her favorite in Mirabel since, as we know, Abuela Alma measured people's importance based on their gift, and Mirabel didn't have one. But why Isabela, when so many other members of the Madrigal troupe had amazing powers? I mean, Isabela had the ability to make plants pop out of thin air, sure, but Luisa clearly had a more functional gift when it came to usefulness. Well, there are a couple of reasons that Alma would prioritize Isabela over the others. First, take a look at each of the family members' appearances. Which one of them looks the most like Abuela when she was younger? That's right, when it comes to comparisons, Abuela and Isabela are nearly the same person. When you take a look at the younger version of Alma in the scene where they are fleeing the town that she and Pedro used to live in, you can see that she shares a ton of similarities with her firstborn grandchild. And through those similarities, it's very possible that Abuela wanted to live the life that she could have had through her granddaughter, her perfect granddaughter, where nothing could go wrong this time. This could also explain why she wanted Isabela to end up with Mariano so bad as well. Not only did she wholeheartedly believe that it would make Isabela happy, maybe because unconsciously it would have made her so happy, but she also probably saw the life that she could have had with her late husband Pedro, had he not sacrificed himself to save the town from its pursuers. Alma simply shaped Isabela's life into what she perceived as perfect, so that she could experience it at least some of what it would have been like for her, had she gotten the chance. And the reason that she was all for Isabela marrying Mariano, despite there presumably being a bunch of other eligible bachelors in town, was simply because of how much he also reminded her of what she had. The movie might make it seem like Mariano is just a handsome macho man who also had a soft spot for his mother and just wanted love, but there's a lot more to Abuela's insistence on him marrying into the family than that. Much like Isabela, Mariano is somehow very similar looking to Pedro, not necessarily in build and size, as it looks like Mariano is much larger, but in the shape of their faces and their hairstyles. And Alma also knows that he holds family above everything else. And who else acted that way? Pedro, the man who sacrificed his life in hopes that his family and the rest of the town could escape with theirs. Believe it or not, it even goes a bit deeper than that. If you got a chance to check out The Art of Encanto, you will know that Pedro was actually a writer when he lived in the town with Alma. He wrote poetry, much as Mariano did. So when Abuela Alma saw the opportunity to set Isabela, her first and favorite grandchild, up with the man who reminded her of her dearest Pedro, she almost made it seem like it needed to happen. A lot of that pressure was likely placed there by her own dark history though. You have to remember what a terrible hardship Alma and her little family went through before being gifted with their Encanto. We can all agree that being forced from your home and watching the love of your life sacrifice himself for you and your kids would truly traumatize anyone. It's no wonder Abuela was so desperate to hold on to perfection. It was literally her life force, the safest thing for her. Nothing could go wrong if everything was perfect. So when Bruno came to her with the prophecy that he saw Mirabel and the house collapsing in on itself, she knew she had to act to keep her illusion of perfection going, grasping more and more onto the gifts themselves rather than cherishing the family members for who each of them was individually. And anyone who threatened her safety eventually became an outcast, hence Bruno and Mirabel. Isabela and her perfection were the perfect thing to focus on. Sure, Luisa could do more functional things with her gifts, but it was Isabela who would keep the family safe in Alma's eyes. After she saw how perfect of a mirror image Isabela's life could be to her old life, she began forcing it onto her. And Isabela didn't question it out of fear of becoming useless to the family and being an outcast like she thought happened to Bruno. Alma thoroughly believed that if Isabela and Mariano got together and started a family, they could not only have the life that she herself had always wanted, but they would also be capable of saving the family's magic. This ultimately led to a fairly toxic relationship between her and her grandchildren, whether they realized it at the time or not. Of course, we don't think that Abuela Alma is evil in any form of the word. But it's clear that she put pressure onto herself to make sure everything was perfect, and she hammered that into Isabela much more than the rest of her family. One of the many amazing things about Encanto is the character relationships and dynamics between each of them. They really illustrate how severely trauma can affect a family in more ways than one. But what do you guys think? Why do you believe Abuela treated Isabela as if she was more special than the rest of her family? Be sure to let us know in the comments down below. As for now, that's all, Disney fans. Let us know what video you'd like to see next in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more magically packed videos.